My first experience in a nightclub ended up with a broken toilet. So back in December 2023, I, 22F, had traveled from my home country to spend some time abroad in Seoul, South Korea. This was my second time in the country, so I was very familiar with the country and the city of Seoul itself. The hotel I was staying at was small with a few bedrooms and only one bathroom. So you can imagine it can get a little cramped at times, but it's not an issue. My second day of staying in the hotel, I had pretty much met everyone except for one person. At around 6 o'clock in the morning, I was still jet-lagged and decided to kill some time in the common area watching YouTube. I then hear someone punch in the code on the door and there I saw her. A young, innocent-looking girl, with platinum blonde hair, pale skin, and an all-white outfit. She looked like something out of an anime or something. Let's call her Brittany. Brittany had just came back after a night of partying. We quickly introduced ourselves and then she made her way to her room to sleep. Later that day I got to talking with Brittany, and we ended up going to a cafe where we shared about our lives in our home countries, and why we came to South Korea. I casually mentioned I had never been clubbing in my entire life, and I wanted to try it at least once. Brittany told me about how she has a lot of experience clubbing back in her home country and she had been clubbing for a week straight in Seoul. Brittany brought up the idea of us going clubbing that night, and I agreed, but only if the club was near our hotel. For more background, I was staying in a hotel with a neighborhood I was very familiar with from my first time in the city. I knew this neighborhood had a couple nightclubs that were just a 10-minute walk from my hotel. This was my first mistake. We later went back to our hotel and got ready to go clubbing. Brittany expressed she wanted to pre-drink with a bottle of soju before we go. I had never heard of the term, pre-drink, until that night and just went along with it. I told her. I'm not much of a drinker, and only had a few sips. Meanwhile, she drank the rest of the soju. For those who don't know, soju can get you drunk pretty quickly and it's not recommended to drink so much at a time. Brittany also mentioned to me that she's the type of person who needs to drink in order to dance and loosen up or else she gets too embarrassed. I should have taken that as a sign. On our way, Brittany ends up sneaking another bottle of soju into the club, next mistake, and I naively thought this was normal, but was worried of getting caught. Again I only had a few sips and she drank the rest while hiding in the club's bathroom. We then finally made our way onto the dance floor. I made sure to stay close since we were the only foreigners in the club. Let me tell you now, there were many men wanting to interact with her because of how innocent she looked, and I have heard horror stories of women getting assaulted in Korea because they were too drunk. So I wanted to stay close for our protection. I was mostly dancing, a little tipsy, but having fun. Brittany, on the other hand, was just standing awkwardly bobbing her head up and down to the music. She wasn't having any fun. We moved around the club a little, until she mentions to me that we should go to the convenience store and buy another bottle of soju. I agreed and we left to do just that. Stupid idea. I again only had a few sips, and Brittany drank the rest. That's 3 bottles of soju she's now consumed. I should have stopped her after the second, but she assured me she could handle her alcohol and she knew what she was doing. She lied. We ended up back at the same nightclub and I began dancing like a dork. Brittany was now dancing a little and I made sure to keep men off her. The alcohol didn't take long to kick in, as she straight up fell and I, along with a few others girls, had to help her up. I then realized I had to get her out of there. So, with a little convincing, I told Brittany we should go to the bathroom. It took us a few minutes but I managed to get her into the bathroom and sit her down. She was swaying and her eyes could barely focus. Brittany, you're drunk, we should go. No, Brittany responded. Brittany, you're drunk. You're drunk too. There was no reasoning with her. At one moment she blacked out and began to drool and almost hit her head. I kept telling her I wanted to go home but she wouldn't listen. "I just want to make out with one more guy," she said, as if we were going to stay. She was stumbling all over the bathroom, almost hitting her head again. We made it out of the bathroom and Brittany attempted to leave me behind by going back onto the dance floor. I hate to say it, but part of me wanted to leave her to her own devices. But my guilty conscience urged me to stay. I spent the next hour and a half trying to get her out of the club, going so far to get the club staff, who didn't know a lot of English, to help me. Brittany was being very uncooperative. She kept attempting to escape back into the club and I along with the club staff had to drag her out of there. In my attempt to get her out, I had a man wrap his arm around me and immediately tore him off. I gave him a death glare as he stared at me. I didn't care that he grabbed me. I was more annoyed that he was preventing me from taking Brittany out of the club. Two Korean girls saw what was happening and first thought the club staff, who were men, were trying to take Brittany and I to a motel or something. The club staff and I explained we were trying to get her out of the club and back to our hotel. And the girls began to help convince Brittany to leave the nightclub. Once we were successful in getting her out, I thanked the two club staff members and explained that I could take her home. The two Korean girls helped me walk Brittany back to our hostel, and eventually parted ways. I'm so thankful to the club staff and those girls, because I wouldn't have been able to get Brittany back by myself. Now this is where the toilet comes in. It was now 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the morning. Brittany and I had just reached our hotel. I had sat Brittany down for a moment. Brittany explained to me that she needed to get her contact lenses out before she could go to bed, and I began to help her up. Brittany began to make a burping noise and I thought she was going to puke. This is where another hotel guest woke up. We'll call her Rachel. Rachel immediately knew Brittany was drunk and began to help her into the bathroom. Brittany, in a drunken state of confusion, stumbled into the toilet and it began to leak. Rachel rushed to stop the toilet from leaking and I tried to help. Rachel began to shoo Brittany out of the bathroom so she could try to fix the toilet as it was still leaking. Brittany was too drunk to understand what was going on and began to say, "The thing is, it doesn't matter if I leave the..." "Brittany, shut up," Rachel raised her voice. No, the thing is, it doesn't matter if I leave." "Brittany, get out," Rachel raised her voice again. Ida began try to get Brittany to leave the bathroom, but in her stubbornness she tried to keep her position. We both end up tripping down in the floor but I was successful in getting her out of the bathroom. This is when 3 more of the hotel guests woke up and saw what was going on. Rachel and I explained the situation and one of the girls, Faith, I'll call here, looked to Brittany and began to try to convince Brittany to go to bed while Rachel continued to fix the toilet. Again, Brittany refused and began to talk like a record player. "Brittany, we're all tired, go to bed," Faith said. No, the thing is, I was taking out my contacts," she repeated this several times. "Okay Brittany, let's go to bed. We're trying to sleep," Faith urges her more. "I don't care if you're trying to sleep, the thing is..." This ticked all of us off. Rachel managed to get the toilet to stop leaking and at this point we were all shouting at Brittany to go to bed. I eventually got so worked up that I went outside to cool off. I was only out for a couple minutes but when I got back, everyone else had went to bed, and Brittany was all alone, crying. I came up to her and gave her a hug before finally getting her to bed. We were unable to use the toilet for 2 days. Thankfully there was another area we could use the bathroom, however, it's not the most convenient, especially in the middle of winter. We let our hotel host know of what happened, and to say he was displeased was an understatement. Our toilet had to be completely replaced. And strangely enough, Brittany was not kicked out after what happened. I felt bad for waking up the other guest, but they assured me it was not my fault and that Brittany was in the wrong. I learned later on that Brittany in general is an irresponsible person. both abroad and in her home country. I won't go into detail, but she essentially puts herself in dangerous situations and doesn't care about the consequences. This has caused her to be taken advantage of by a lot of people. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened had I left her alone in that nightclub. If someone horrible would have found and taken advantage of her. All I can say is that the hotel I stayed at has a brand new toilet because of that night.